What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Devy YouTube channel. It's Tuesday, so you know what that means. We're doing some freshman spotlights. So what I want to do all year for college football is talk about some guys. And last year we used to talk about, Damian Martinez, Jay Knott, some guys that people weren't necessarily knew about, but we're going to highlight them. So if you're a college football fan, you'll love this. If you're a Devy fan or college fantasy, you're going to like this too, because this kind of gives you the idea of what these guys are doing right now and how good they are. Now, some of these freshmen, I will say this as a whole, have not really popped off yet. A lot of the quarterbacks that came in, the five-star kids, they're sitting behind incumbent starters that aren't going to be moved probably pretty easily. The running backs have gone off to a very pretty slow start. And the wide receivers outside of Zachariah Branch and the other guy we're going to talk about in this episode, we haven't really seen a breakout yet. So a little bit of a slower start than we compared to last year's class. I will say the quarterback class and the wide receiver class is very talented. The running back class has always kind of been a question mark in terms of this class, and tight ends are always a question mark outside of Deuce Robinson. So we'll get into it. We're going to talk about these guys. I'm going to give you three freshmen that you should be watching and be excited about this college football season. All right, so let's get into this. I know you guys are going to get sick or tired of talking about Zachariah Branch, but we got to talk about Zachariah Branch. This kid is absolutely phenomenal. What he's been able to do this season and what he's been able to do. Like when you look at it, 9 catches for on 11 targets, 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. So from like a receiving standpoint, when we're talking about him as a receiver, we haven't seen like a huge, like ADOT is only 6.9. So we're not seeing him catch deep balls, right? And you can see his kind of where it's at by the numbers in terms of the screen there of where he's catching a lot of these things. Reception percentage is in the 80 percentile, which is good. He's coming out of the slot a lot. So we're looking at that as that 77% there. In his recent game against Stanford, he only had 4 catches, 30 yards, but he did have another punt return for a touchdown. So I think the area with him that we have to see, he's had a kick return for a touchdown and a punt return for a touchdown this year. And that is where, Zachariah Branch is going to do his work. He had 96-yard kick return. Then he had that punt return for 80 yards he had 3 punt returns yesterday for 80 yards and a touchdown, averaged 26.7 on the returns there. He's over 20 on punt returns, and he's averaging over 40 yards on kick returns. So I know the numbers are small a little bit on there for just 3 returns, but he's explosive. Like when he gets into the hard part of USC's schedule, they're going to lean on Zachariah Branch. He's been absolutely phenomenal. He's a guy that you really, really should highlight here. He is definitely the best player in this class right now, and he is going on his way to being a first-round pick. The next kid to kind of highlight, Dante Moore. So Dante Moore for us on this channel was someone that we love. We talked about it in November. We talked about Dante Moore being an impact player this year. We've kind of been on the train that he's going to win that starting job. We've talked about it, and here it is. We're here, right? By the numbers, and this is overall the last 2 games. His PFF offensive grade, 79.3. Big time throw percentage is almost 10%. He was absolutely dialed in against Coastal Carolina. He was 7 for 12, 143 yards and 2 touchdowns, but he was just dialing and dealing out there. Turnover worthy play. He did have 1 turnover against Coastal Carolina. It's 2%, but that's not bad for a freshman. If we're going to talk about an area that he needs to improve on as he gets into this Pac-12 schedule, which is Pac-12 is absolutely loaded, it's the offensive grade under pressure. At 56%, he's got to be better there. And I think he knows that, but that offensive grade under pressure is something definitely to worry about a little bit as he progresses, though, because of his experience in high school. He was a 4-year starter in high school. I think that number is going to get a little bit better, but you have to love what he's doing right now. 433 yards, 5 touchdowns. If you bought high on Dante Moore, you're probably pretty happy right now in that UCLA offense. So we have to give him a shout out for what he's been able to do on that field. And moving forward, where is he at in the hierarchy, right? When you're thinking of Jackson Arnold, Nico, Malachi Nelson, Arch Manning, those guys in there, Dante Moore could put enough. When we talk about freshman quarterbacks and we talk about these high recruit guys, they got to see the field, right? We've seen plenty of guys not see the field when they're high recruits, and then they burn out. Think of Harrison Bailey, some of these other guys that you probably don't even know their names anymore. They got to get on the field. Dante Moore's on the field, and he's showing that he should be on that field. And you have to give a shout out to him for what he's doing within this offense. And I honestly think he's just being a very good quarterback and being very efficient. The next player that we're going to talk about, Notre Dame wide receiver Jaden Greathouse. Now, we talk about some of the wide receivers not necessarily stepping up yet. Think of like the Jurion Dickies, some of these other guys that are high star guys. Jaden Greathouse has stepped up. 6'1", 204 to 213, depending on where you look. Big kid. His ADOT right now is 10.5. He has 100% reception percentage. This dude just catches everything thrown his way so far. 8 targets, 8 catches, 113 yards. He came out of the gate firing against Navy. He had those 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's kind of settled back down a little bit, but against NC State, he did have another touchdown there. And so he had 3 catches, 15 yards. So again, this does highlight not a ton of like big performances right now out of the freshman class, but you have to give him a shout out because I do think Jaden, based on his profile, we're talking about a guy that can have a big rise, right, of the freshman group. Slot percentage is really interesting because he's really coming out of slot in this offense, and that size, that is an interesting note. I think that's something there. You can see where he's catching a lot of those balls, and it's deep targets there. So we're talking over 20 yards, as you can tell there. And that's something, again, to know. Obviously, the sample size is small, but if he's going to be that deep threat in Notre Dame's offense, and as we move forward into Notre Dame season, he could have even better numbers. So that's something to know. Shout out Jaden Greathouse. He absolutely phenomenal. And I know Todd Vincent, who is an analyst at FF League Winners and Dynasty DGens, has talked about Jaden a lot. So I want to shout him out because he is the best Devy mind right now in the space. So if you like college football, but you're a big college fantasy, go follow Todd because he was on Jaden really early last year in the process when no one else was. So that's our freshman spotlights. Those 3 guys are really dominating right now. As we go into the season, some of these other freshmen are going to step up. I'm hoping Nico from Tennessee gets a shot at Joe Milton's job here pretty soon. But appreciate you guys. We'll check you guys on the next one.